So we're talking about Alzheimer's today, a disease, a condition that plagues 27 million people across the world every single year. It's sad to look at our parents develop this over the years. It's sad to see the old and the elderly people suffering from Alzheimer's, because the symptoms of Alzheimer's come with confusion, short-term memory, memory loss, mood swings, difficulty in comprehending languages, forgetting things that were told to them 5 to 10 minutes ago. Now, the whole idea is Alzheimer's is trying to be treated right now through pharmaceutical drugs and medication, but there is nothing yet that can cure this disease. When there is nothing that can cure the disease, the next thing that we can look at, yes, is definitely solutions to help people who have Alzheimer's manage it better and potentially reverse the degeneration in the brain cells. But the most important investment that we could make is in prevention. You see, you don't just wake up with Alzheimer's. It's been happening in you over the years, over the months, over the years. It just doesn't happen, because we're going to understand today exactly what this disease is. When you understand a disease and how it manifests in the human body, that's when you can apply logic and get that motivation from inside to prevent it or to fight it or possibly heal it. So Alzheimer's is best if prevented, or in early detection cases, there's a lot that can be done to improve the quality of life and the memory of a patient. So Alzheimer's is a kind of dementia. Dementia is related to memory loss, but Alzheimer's is a kind of dementia. There are many kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's is one of them, basically. Now, this is usually caused by genetics, in very rare cases genetics, but mainly by the environmental factors and lifestyle. And we need to understand this because we decide today what kind of lifestyle each and every one of us choose. The lifestyle that we choose today will result in how we are with our health 15 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line, or 20 years down the line. So what we put into our system today, the way we move our bodies, the way we think and sleep, okay, will depend on how our health is going to be 15 years down the line or later. So basically, Alzheimer's is a degenerative condition of the brain. Now, understand this very, very clearly. The human brain is built of over 100 billion nerve cells, also called neurons. There is constant communication between each of these neurons. Okay, group of these neurons and nerve cells form communities. Some of these communities are responsible for thinking. Some of them are responsible for learning. Some of them are responsible for remembering. Some of them are responsible for the way you see, hear, smell, and think. Each of these community of cells have various functions. They store information and they communicate constantly with one another. Now, in the brain of an Alzheimer patient, what is found is something called plaque. This plaque is also known as beta amyloids. These are protein fragments that grow between these nerve cells that connect each other. Now, 100 billion cells connected with each other to communicate. When you have a plaque, also known as the beta amyloid, which starts growing between these cells, what gets disrupted? Communication. When communication between your cells get disrupted, that not only impairs your memory, but it also impairs your bodily function, which is why some people who go through Alzheimer's, it's first memory, confusion, short-term memory loss, and then it's changes in their body. The inability to control their bladder, the inability to control their stools, they start hunching over, their body starts stiffening because there's not enough of communication. There's the wrong communication happening between neurons and nerve cells that control every single function in the human body. There's another kind of protein that is also identified in Alzheimer's patients, and these are called tangles. These are twisted fibers of protein, a protein called tau, that lodges itself in the nerve cells. So now you have plaque between the nerve cells and you have tangles inside of the nerve cells. Now let's go inside of each of these billion nerve cells and understand very simply how it works. Every brain cell or neuron or nerve cell is like a little factory. Picture it as a little factory. It's constantly getting supplies in terms of nutrients from the food that you eat and oxygen from the air that you breathe. The cell gets these supplies, it creates energy, it generates energy to perform its function, and it also has the job of removing waste. So you have supplies coming into the cell, doing its job, creating energy, repairing, rejuvenating, conducting all of its functions, and then removing waste. Something goes into a cell which is good, the waste has to come out. And that's good health of a cell. Like I always say, disease starts off in a cell. So if we're not treating a patient at a cellular level, we're never going to get the root cause and we're never going to be able to bring comfort or healing to that patient. So if the problem is in the cell, the solution is also in the cell. So in an Alzheimer's patient, again, There is plaque between the cells, which disrupts communication, and there are tangles, a protein fragment in the cells that disrupts the functioning of the cell. So in most Alzheimer's patients, these are the two suspicious elements that causes Alzheimer's, and this builds up over years and years. Now let's go over some of the causes, the possible causes of Alzheimer's. Number one, medication. There are so many medications, which is why it is so important that when you're on a medication, you should be aware of the side effects of every medication you take. I'm not against medication. Certain people need medications for a short period of time, sometimes for a lifetime. But when you are taking a medication, your journey doesn't end there. You got to make changes in your nutrition and lifestyle to support the collateral damage and the side effects of the medication that you take. Certain classes of antidepressants have every link to the cause of Alzheimer's. People who take bladder control medication as well, certain kinds of bladder control medication has direct links to Alzheimer's again. Certain classes of antihistamines. So instead of treating an allergy, we constantly take antihistamines, never looking at the liver, which is the seat house of allergies, detoxing, cleaning our liver, changing the way we eat so that certain allergies can be managed automatically and naturally. Because if we keep popping all these pills, it's giving us relief, but it's causing a side effect and another disease that's going to manifest in you sometime later. So if you have to be on these medications, understand how you can manage the side effects of these medications. And that's usually through detoxification, changing the way you eat, sleep, move, and think, and your water intake as well. Lack of exercise, so important. What happens when we exercise? We circulate blood. Okay, blood is carried to your brain. What does those 100 billion cells that I spoke to you about requires energy? Where does that energy come from? The nutrients that you eat from your food and oxygen. Blood carries nutrients and oxygen to your cells. If you have improper circulation, you have the wrong amount of blood reaching your brain, which means those 100 billion cells are not getting the right amount of energy and nutrients and fuel to do its basic job. They become weaker and weaker over time, and all those beta amyloids and all of those tangles start building up in an area which is weak in energy and cannot fight itself using your own body immunity. Then we have depression, which is showing surprising links to Alzheimer's. And again, what is depression? Okay, there is a neurological function or dysfunction in your neurons and nerve cells, and over time this gets suppressed, weakening the ability of your cells to function normally and probably bringing on Alzheimer's as well. Exposure to heavy metals, which is why detoxification is so important. People working in factories, people with exposure to insecticides, pesticides, chemicals have to be very careful that there is no lead or mercury or heavy metal poisoning, which can later lead to Alzheimer's for sure. People who are exposed to paints and turpentines and all these chemicals, it's extremely, extremely important. Normal people like us who are exposed to pollution in dirty cities also have exposure to carcinogens and elements that can cause Alzheimer's. Then emotions again. There's surprising research showing how loneliness as an emotion can bring on Alzheimer's, because again, every emotion impacts every single neuron in the brain. And then we have diabetes as well. In fact, Alzheimer's is now being called type 3 diabetes. Why? Because the cells in the brain become insulin resistant. They can no longer manage insulin, and that's called a type 3 diabetes. And when your cells become resistant to insulin in the brain, you allow the formation of plaque and tangles inside of your cells. So what's the solution? Is there a solution? Number one, prevention. Like I always say, you can have the best health insurance, you can be wealthy, you can afford like a 7-star hospital, the best doctors, you can fly around the world. But once you're in that trap, you never get out of it. So your next best investment is prevention. Prevention is better than cure. That's an old proverb. It's what we learned when we were small, and it's something that we don't follow. Prevention. How do we prevent this? Like I said, Alzheimer's could be building in your body even at the age of 25, 30, 35, 40, and finally express itself. So, number one, omega-3. Omega-3 is so important for cellular function, which is why I tell so many men and women, never go on oil-free diets, never do oil-free cooking. Your body requires the right kinds of oil, because oil and fats, the right kind of fats, saturated and unsaturated, produces hormones, and it is required for brain function. It is so important to understand that you need the right fats, and just cutting out the wrong fats can help you lose weight, but cutting out the right fats can decrease your immunity, your hormonal imbalance, and the functioning of your brain. So you get omega-3 in eggs, you get omega-3 in fatty fish, you also get omega-3 in walnuts and flax seeds. So you want to make sure that you have enough of omega-3, either through whole foods, that's what I prefer, and second, supplementation if you are unable to get it from whole foods all the time. Then stimulating, I always say exercise the physical self, but what are you doing to exercise your mind? You see those neurons, they're constantly communicating every second of the day. Those neurons have to be exercised as well. So playing games like Sudoku, playing games like crosswords, and keeping your mind busy all the time. Watching TV is not keeping your mind busy. Being on social media all the time is not keeping your mind busy. It's engaging those neurons to constantly process and work, keeping that communication live. Extremely important. Fruits and vegetables in its raw form, because they have enzymes that can stimulate brain function. So again, it's going back to nature. If you have a balanced diet with fruits, raw vegetables, nuts, seeds, and a little bit of cooked food, you're doing it right. Interesting research about coffee as well for all the coffee lovers out there. 1 to 2 cups of coffee is shown to work very, very well in the prevention of Alzheimer's, and also people who have Alzheimer's, because it has the ability to stimulate neurological functions in your nerve cells. And of course, I'm talking about good old plain coffee. I'm not talking about your frappuccinos and all of that stuff with whipped cream and 5 different kinds of sugar and high-fat milk and all of that stuff. Normal, simple, regular coffee with a little bit of your white sugar or your jaggery at home. And then we have meditation, so important. Now, how does meditation work? When we meditate, that increases your vascular circulation of blood to your brain, which is why when you finish meditating, you feel so fresh, you feel so energized in your brain. Because number one, none of us are breathing to our whole capacity. If I ask every one of you viewing this right now, observe right now at this second, how are you breathing? And you'll find that you're not breathing to your whole capacity. And now you take a deep breath. Now you're breathing to your whole capacity. You're sending blood, you're sending oxygen and nutrients to every one of those 100 billion cells. So meditation is so important to keep that neurological communication between your cells alive all the time. Vitamin D and B12, again, and this is something I constantly see in all of my Alzheimer patients. They've had a chronic levels of low vitamin D3 and B12 over the years. Now we know vitamin D3 is not just for your bones, but it's a precursor of making hormones. And vitamin B12 has everything to do with your neurological health, which is why people who are deficient in vitamin B12 are low on energy, they feel fatigued, they have something called brain fog, they can't think straight. And then they think, oh, I'm not eating enough, I'm not sleeping enough. You have a vitamin B12 deficiency. It is important that you correct it right now. You need to correct your B12 deficiency, not just with supplements and food, but if you have an unclean gut, your body can't synthesize B12 the right way. So when you clean your gut, you have a clean functioning gut, you synthesize B12 in the right way. If you have a deficiency, fix it. Even people who have Alzheimer's right now, you've got to make sure their D3 levels are high within levels and their B12 levels are high within levels for them to get some amount of relief. Finally, coming down to that ingredient I talk about on every video, because it is part of nature, it is part of our sleep. So important. What happens when we sleep? There's a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin is a sleep hormone. The more melatonin we have, the less chances we have of that plaque or those tangles from corrupting our neurons and our nerve cells. But the less melatonin you have, which mostly everyone who sleeps incorrectly, people who look at their phones in between their sleep before, you're not producing enough of melatonin. And that melatonin is not just an anti-cancer hormone that prevents proliferation of cancer cells in the human body. It is also for your brain. There is magic that happens when you sleep. I cannot stress the importance of sleep for everyone, your children, you, or whatever it is. That is your medicine. That is your magic drug. When you sleep, have you ever figured out how the brain detoxes? Remember, we said supply of energy to the brain and release of waste. Your brain doesn't have a lymphatic system because it's not connected because of the brain barrier. You have a glymphatic system in your brain. While you sleep, your cells shrink to almost 60% to allow all the toxins to flow out of your cells into the bloodstream and out of your body into your drainage system. So if you're not sleeping, your brain is not detoxing. If your brain is not detoxing, you're holding waste in your brain cells that encourage the formation of plaque and disrupt communication. So sleep is so important for you. We spoke about type 3 diabetes, also called Alzheimer's. So if you have type 2 diabetes, you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to reverse it or to minimize it and minimize the amount of medication you can if you can. Okay? Walking, one of the best exercises that stimulates immediate blood flow. So you're busy, you're tired, you don't have time to work out, get that walk, get that 10,000 steps, which will keep your brain function healthy and possibly prevent you from getting Alzheimer's. Now, two things which I've seen works really, really well for Alzheimer's, and there's a lot of research out there. We've been using it for the last 3 to 4 years with fantastic results in people who have Alzheimer's in terms of relief. I'm not going to say it cures them or heals them. Curcumin, which is an extract of turmeric, of the turmeric root. It is anti-inflammatory in nature and known to reduce inflammation and even your brain cells. This mixed with a saturated fat like pure ghee or coconut oil is a fantastic tonic to keep your brain healthy. And there are various communities around the world who constantly consume turmeric and saturated fats. In fact, in India, Alzheimer's was unheard of a couple of years ago, and we owe that to our diet, which is rich in turmeric and rich in saturated fats like ghee, coconut oil, and other saturated fats. But over time, India changed. We moved away from our spices to Italian, Greek, and all the other cuisines which lack the spices that our bodies require. And we changed from saturated fats to olive oil and all the other crappy refined oils. And there you have disease slowly, creeping up on us and becoming an epidemic. So these are the things that you can look at to prevent Alzheimer's. Okay, stress has a direct impact. When we stress, what's happening? There's turmoil in all the nerve cells. When there's turmoil in any cell, there's a possibility of dysfunction and disease. So this is something that we can prevent for all of ourselves, including our parents. If our parents and elderly people don't have it right now, it's important for you to align their lifestyles with this, because there's still a chance that they can prevent it. And if there are people who are suffering from this, like I said, the omega-3s, the coffee, the fruits and vegetables, getting the nuts and seeds into their diet, proper sleep, managing their diabetes, curcumin, turmeric, saturated fats, it can bring a lot of relief to people who have Alzheimer's. Remember, it's a degenerative disease of the brain. So if the brain starts getting impaired very soon, the body will follow, because communication that happens at your neuron level in the brain impacts every function in the human body. So what does it finally come down to? Putting the right balanced nutrition in your system, moving more, adequate exercise, sleeping, quality sleep, and emotional stress. That's the paradigm of health for prevention and healing. Have a great night, everyone. Until next time, eat smart, move more, sleep right, and breathe deep.